Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with me, your host. My name is Chad Medved. This is my podcast. Appreciate you being here with us. First and foremost, it has been quite a while since we've seen each other. I've been on a break for about a month and a half. No new episodes since mid-December, and I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be back working on I'll Call You Right Back. I've been on a much-needed break that has allowed me to kind of charge up this battery and get ready for a fulfilling 2025 year. You know, I've been doing this for 7 years now. We're rounding up to 300 episodes of this podcast, and it gets a little bit tiring, It gets a little bit tiring. So I had to take a little winter break to, take care of myself, my mental health, get things ready, and kind of get things in place for a more calculated 2025 season. I could say that, just approaching this year a little bit differently that will allow me to not be as stressed and maxed out as I usually am with this. If people are new here, though, let me give you a little background about what I do. So I'll Call You Right Back podcast is a project I started about 7 years ago. My goal with this project was to interview just interesting people about what they do and how they got to that point in their life. And whenever I say interesting people, it's all sorts of different people, all walks of life, business owners, entrepreneurs, creatives, artists, musicians, you name it. A really wide variety of guests are featured on I'll Call You Right Back podcast. And the reason that I did this is because, as a consumer of just cool stuff throughout the city, I wanted to learn how the sausage was made, so to speak. I wanted to learn more about these places that I loved patronizing, whether it be restaurants, whether it be cool stores, whether it be venues, things like that. I wanted to learn more about the origin story of these places and of these people. And I think that is, I think that that's pretty important. I think that it's important not just for the listener, but also for the guests on this podcast. It gives the guests an opportunity to come here, sit down, and kind of unpack their life's work, whether it be a restaurant, whether it be a venue, whether it be, art that they do, music, anything like that. It gives them an opportunity to come and sit down and really talk at length about their passions and their life. And I think that that's important because, as someone who just goes to these places and patronizes these places, it's great. And they offer great products and great reasons we go to these places. But, as someone, I want to learn more behind that. I want to learn why these places exist. And I think that I've been able to do that over these last 7 years with I'll Call You Right Back podcast. And I think that it's been an important tool for a lot of people in the city. It adds more context to all these people that are woven in the fabric of Pittsburgh and help add to the reason that we love it rather. And, in addition to this podcast, I do all sorts of other things beyond that. I plan events, I plan field trips, I do shows, and, it's given me a big opportunity over these last years to kind of network with a lot of great people around the city and kind of create a community that is like-minded in the way that they want to go beyond just popping into a store and buying something at a cool place. If you're passionate and you care about a local business in the city, it's often you don't get to learn that much about it. You might be able to read a post, you might be able to see their Instagram, you might be able to read a write-up that they might get in a newspaper, but beyond that, when do you really have an opportunity to sit down with the owner and talk with them for a couple hours about their life's work? And that's really where I'll Call You Right Back started and why it started. And over these last 7 years, it's really grown into something incredible. Over this last break, I've had people reach out, just making sure that I wasn't stopping doing this podcast. And, there's no end in sight for me. I could assure you that we have a full 2025 season. And, I've been prepping for it in this last month and a half so I could come a little bit more calculated this year and make things easier on me, make things easier to be more consistent with the episodes. And I appreciate everyone's patience while I do this. This is a side passion project for me. I'll Call You Right Back is just a side project for me. I have a 40-hour-a-week job that I do Monday through Friday. I work at 9 to 5, and I come home during the week and I work on this every day. And it's really, like I said, a passion project that I'm hoping to eventually turn into something that I could, focus on full time. If you think about it, I've done all this. This is all just extra. Imagine how much more I could do if this was, my job, a full-time focus rather than just after work. But this year I hope to accomplish that in a bunch of different ways. I'm offering different ways for businesses and creatives around the city to advertise to a more unique audience with the podcast. So if you guys ever wanted to work with me and work with what I've created over at I'll Call You Right Back, now's your chance. You could advertise, you could sponsor the podcast, you could do all these things that you could learn more about on I'llCallYouRightBack.com. If you got events and you want them highlighted in week episodes with the intros, there's opportunities for all that now. So if you've ever wanted to work with me and advertise your business in a unique way, reach out to me. I'llCallYouRightBack.com, or you could hit me up through an email. I'llCallYouRightBack@gmail.com. And hopefully that's a way to help me monetize this, and that would allow me to make it grow into even more than it is right now. Now, beyond just prepping the podcast and doing interviews and things like that, I also do other stuff. I plan field trips, I plan events, I make cool merchandise, and I've been working on that as well. So you can see a little preview of that right there. I got some hats now made that I'm working on that I'm waiting to come in. Some cool beanies that are Carhartt branded. We always come correct with some good shit over here at I'll Call You Right Back. But the reason everyone is here this week I have a great way to kick off 2025. For episode 296, I sit down with an artist and photographer named Louie Nice. Lou is local to the city of Pittsburgh, and he is an artist whose main focus is photography. Currently, it's film photography, but beyond photographer, you can't really put a cap on what this guy does. He's interested in acting. He's interested in, all sorts of different creative lanes. But as of right now, his main focus is film photography. And currently he is working mainly with an artist named Zach Bryant, who is very popular. I'm sure you guys have heard of him. He is probably arguably one of the biggest country stars in the world. And Lou is traveling with him around the country as they tour and documenting all of his work through incredible film photography. And I invited Lou in to kind of get a glimpse into what all that entails, especially with someone that's focusing mainly on film. Now, obviously, digital photography is a little bit more forgiving, a little bit easier to work with. You take 1,000 photos with a DSLR, dump them all on a computer, and you can work with it a little bit more. But Lou's main focus is film photography, and that's really what piqued my interest. As someone who tours around and takes these film photos, you got to think about the process of developing all the film. And I wanted to get him in the studio, and I wanted to learn about that mostly. But along with learning about, the day-to-day of being a film photographer, we learn about, his origin story more than anything. We learn about how he picked up a camera. We talk all about, how he ended up linking up with Zach Bryan. We talk about ultimately some of the bigger images that he shot that are used for some of Zach's, American Heartbreak is one of Zach Bryan's biggest albums, and arguably one of the main reasons that he's as big as he is. You know, it's his first studio album, and Lou was the photographer who took the album art. You know, we talk all about that. We talk about, you know, him traveling around, and we talk about, you know, everything that has to do with being a touring photographer. So it's a fascinating conversation. And like I said earlier in the intro, at I'll Call You Right Back, we talk about things at length. And me and Lou sit down for 3 hours today, and we talk about things. So I had to break it into 2 parts. What's interesting about us is, you know, I invited him in a few weeks before this, and we recorded a 3-hour episode, and turns out the mics were all messed up for some reason, and the audio was all messed up in the episode. So I hit him up again, and I was like, yo, dude, things are messed up with this episode. Is there any way you'd want to do this again? And for him being a great guy, he was like, absolutely. So I was like, yeah, we'll hone it in a little bit more. It won't be a 3-hour episode. And it ended up being 2 hours and 40 minutes. So I think that speaks for itself. You know, me and him could go on and talk forever. And it's just a great conversation about his life, what he does, and everything in between. So this week is part 1 of a part 2 episode. And I'm excited to, you know, finally be back to work and finally get this out for you guys to listen to. As always, this episode is obviously available audio only on Apple and Spotify, but the video episode, if you're listening on Apple and Spotify, is also available on my YouTube channel. You could type in I'll Call You Right Back podcast and it will pop up. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment, all that, the whole deal. And that's pretty much all I got for you. I'm excited to be back. I'm excited for you guys to listen to this because it's a really great episode. So without further ado, episode 296 of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with artist and photographer Louie Nice.
I gotta use the telephone.
Hello?
Telephone.
I'll call you right back. Call you right back.
Telephone.
I'll Call You Right Back podcast. Yeah, the Steelers game. I mean, I don't watch a lot of sports, but I obviously seen that they lost.
Which is wild for you to say that you don't watch a lot of sports, because it's like the first thing we talked about last time
Was basketball.
Yeah, it was
Elizabeth
Ford.
My ties to sports is just like the network of people that I know. But yeah, dude, I played football my entire life. I don't watch any sports at all. I mean, which is kind of weird to think about. And then you're a Pittsburgher and you tell people, you know, that you don't really give a shit about the Steelers.
Yeah.
And people were like, you know, they like hex you. You're like, what? But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know why I don't. I just like, even whenever I played, like I was a fucking captain of the football team. I haven't watched a Steelers game in, 15 years.
I wouldn't say that I spend a lot of time like mulling over just like the Steelers. Like I play fantasy football with my buddies and the guys in the band.
I feel like I would like that just to like
fantasy football's fun. I mean, it gets you into like
the other people and everything.
Yeah, like you just start watching. You might not watch an entire game, but you'll watch some bits and pieces because somebody on that team needs to get you like 15 points for you to get over the hump this week and like get a win. But like the side of it of just paying attention to like specifically the Steelers, honestly, at least since Ben in like older age, like when he was not playing, at least up to the part he did when he was like, more in his prime or when he was younger. But like ever since then, like in the Kenny Pickett time and like leading in, it's definitely just been a very tough time for Steelers fans to just like
to latch on,
hang in and like watch and like be there. Cause it's like, we come out 500 every year, but then at the same time, we're just like, we're like not winning in the playoffs.
I mean, we were ripping for a minute, right? Like, and then did we lose 4 straight now? Is that what they said? I don't know. But I think the last Steelers game that I like actively watched was whenever Santonio Holmes caught that touchdown pass in the end zone.
That's a really good Steeler game to watch. Like that's a really good one.
That was a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, that's an all timer. Like that's great.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Don't watch a game.
We won that, right?
Yeah.
Was that the same one that James Harrison ran back that?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, don't watch another Steeler game.
Yeah, I see my friends who I got a buddy who is he's real active in the bike community. He runs a company called Coddle Built for anyone that needs any bike repairs, but he is like a psychopath Steelers fan. Every week, I'm pretty sure he's been going to almost every game, but I just see him. I see his heart break after every loss,
dude. I mean, Russ came in. Russ looked really good there for a minute, and then it's just like I feel like I don't know. There's always something you could say. It just feels like we're waiting until we're down by 3 scores to finally start to actually try and pass the ball downfield. And by that time, George Pickens is fed up. He doesn't really want to play. I'm not saying he doesn't want to play. Just he's not like. Yeah, he's locked in like he was at the start of the game. Like we're trying to battle back from behind, and then it's just we're just out of it. Like we waited till there was 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter last night for us to just like pass the ball downfield. We went down the field in no time. Pat Freiermuth caught a touchdown, and we were back in the game. Like, and then it just was like a little bit of mismanagement and just losing a tough game in the end.
Tale as old as time.
But we're in the playoffs, so hey, like Steelers get to watch again. Let's hope that the Chargers lose. Let's put that out there today. Let's hope the Chargers lose because we'd love to play the Texans instead of having to play the Ravens again.
When does the Chargers game play? Is that today?
Yeah, it's Sunday. Yeah, crazy. Sunday at 8:30, and we're just here doing this thing. So.
I know, I like it. It's been a fucked up last few weeks. Like we've had some terrible shit happen. My wife lost her dad, and like it's just been like I appreciate it, but it's just been like I don't know. I feel like the last just through the holiday and everything, it's just everything's been just like a blur.
Yeah.
And now the beginning of the year, it's nice to get back into everything and try to. I haven't done an interview in probably a month now.
Really?
Last one was Clinton from the Common Heart.
Yeah.
Clinton Clegg. And then after that, I was planning on taking all December off, but shit just was crazy. So yeah, but full circle, you and I have done this before. We did a pretty lengthy podcast before, but I had some technical difficulties on my end that would have extended me way beyond my capacity because, every time you talked in that interview, it was lower and I would have had to adjust all the volume. I'm sure there was some AI shit that I could have did, but I figured we could just get it back in here and run it again.
I'm done.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought the camera so we could talk a little bit about that. But
yeah, we can throw that in. My cell phone out of frame.
That's all right.
Regardless.
That's all right. This is that's all right. So you guys are home now for a while.
Yeah, and in terms of just strictly tour work with Zach Bryan, like another one of the people that you've interviewed on the show, and Reed. Me and Reed are back home now, and tour's over. I think we did close to like 90 shows, which
just in 2024.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a pretty big number, but and I feel like I should like know that number and like be on top of it. But
I asked Nate.
They did more.
He that's what he was like. We went through and we just tallied everything up, so he had it just on hand. But it's kind of crazy to I'm sure everyone sees these people that are these big artists that are touring all over the country, and obviously sees all the content that's already put out, but you don't really have an idea of like the actual number.
Yeah.
Of like shows that these people.
I feel like that's very different for the likes of like Meeks, Reed, Nate, whoever, Charles, Zach. In the sense that they every night go up and they play songs, and I just feel like there's a thing going to each show that they just are almost able to notch that off. I'm just hypothetically saying this, but like for me, shooting it, especially when it's like back-to-back nights, or Zach will do 3 nights to accommodate getting as many people in there to like see the show as possible. I start to disassociate after night one because I'm just like, I have to shoot the same thing again. And it's like, all right, what am I going to do now? And so then after we played that 2 times and then we went to, Vancouver and played there once, and then we're playing twice in Portland and then 3 times here. I don't remember how many shows I did, 2 days ago. So
fever dream.
Yeah. And it gets lost, but I think it was a pretty high number. We had a really big year. So
I mean, I would say that Zach Bryan had a pretty big year this year. I mean, so you're a photographer for people that don't know.
Yeah.
You are a photographer for multiple people, but your focus for the past, little while has been with Zach Bryan, which, if people don't know who that is, he's probably one of the biggest country stars in the world right now, which is kind of crazy to think about because a photographer, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is like, I don't really know the mechanics of everything that goes on behind the scenes with a photographer. It kind of seems, overwhelming, but you take it one step further because you shoot on film.
Yeah.
And that's a beast in itself.
Yeah. So
I wanted to pull you in here because we could kind of kill 2 birds with one stone, talk about the photography, but also talk about, your conscious choice of, using film.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I think I might have said this last time too, but I think the bigger thing that just not so much of a representation in terms of the show and shooting that in my work, but film I think is an ongoing thing that for me personally it really holds me accountable. It's so easy to be able to, and it's not knocking any form of digital photography, but it's because I have digital cameras and I use them from time, of course, but with that, it's so easy to just rattle off shots and not miss something. And film holds me to this spot where it's like, hey, like I have to like have all my settings correct, have all these things correct. I don't have autofocus, and I'm going to shoot it in this way and shoot it with this lens on and try and do these different things, and having that all together in the moment to like nail it makes you. I obviously it grows you as a photographer. I think anybody should, if you have been somebody who's just been steady into using digital cameras or any of that sort, keep using them. Don't stop. I'm not like an advocate here saying like one's better than the other. It's simply what you want to do with your workflow and creativity. But like the plus with doing it is I think you get so much more comfortable with a camera and you get the ability to do that. And for me, just from a life standpoint, I think I've had a good background of just people that are there for me and that are backing me, and I think I've always known that. So like I've never, like when I was here in Pittsburgh, felt like I just like fall off the face of the earth or fail, and it was like almost like always a like crutch of sorts, and I've always just needed something to hold me accountable. So film does that in more ways than like I can explain, but
you got to be more intentional with film.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like a more methodical and intentional way of shooting. Whereas like if you have a digital camera, you could rattle off, like you said, 50 shots in 1 second, really.
Half a second, probably.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy to think about that.
Yeah.
That's what's cool about the film stuff because, like you were saying, you have to kind of know the ins and out of your camera to be able to execute things the way you want them rather than like, having a little bit more freedom with a digital frame. And I don't know, it's wild. I'm very new to the whole film game, and I'm just in like the past few months of trying to understand the camera a little bit more. I don't know. It's wild to be a casual shooter of film and seeing the product of that moment of me shooting that and when it comes out. But I don't know. It just overwhelms me that you get to do it. But obviously, we talked last time about you and your introduction to photography in general. I'd like to kind of get back into that just to go over it again. So, I mean, in the beginning, you didn't shoot film, right?
No, I didn't really. I wasn't really doing photography. Probably, I think it was 2013, maybe like late 2013 or no, yeah, late 2013. I was getting prepared to move to Los Angeles for acting, and I bought my first camera. It was a Nikon D3200. Like I bought I think you can still do that at like Costco. Like my mom had a Costco membership, and I had just been like saving up money. I wanted the camera not for the sake of like getting into photography, but like for like, which I didn't even understand crop sensors and all of this other stuff that goes into it because it's a different type of a camera. But I just wanted it for self tapes for acting, and I basically moved out there and then just started like using that thing and taking pictures and using it for self tapes. And then longer I was out in Los Angeles, it's like, oh, hey, like need headshots. Like I'll set everything up and then let my friend take the picture of me, or I'll get them headshots. Then it started building in like doing that. And I'm not saying I'm good at taking headshots. Lots of other people are very, very good at that. And but they were things obviously for the time being, you know, being a not SAG affiliated actor or whatever, like it's a picture to use. And that started building. Then I had an ex that I would shoot for. I had that did music and was signed to a label. I had other people I knew that were artists that were working. So like I would just get around and like work on stuff and it would happen. And somewhere in that time, I just like actually like, I don't want to say got the bug. I hate that word, but like, like I had that thing like come up, and it's hilarious enough. Like back when Instagram was like really, really goofy, like way back in the day, like searching on it and like film, like hashtag film. And then you come up on all of these people tagging cameras. And I remember the first one, and it's the first film camera I bought, was an Olympus XA2, which hilarious enough now is like a coveted point and shoot camera. It has a really nice lens on it, kind of an annoying like little electrical shutter button on it that's neither here nor there. But and I just started taking pictures with it. You know, fucked a lot of rolls up, like had a lot of things that just, you know, opening the back and rolling it up, like did that. Probably the first 2 or 3 rolls I shot on that camera, I completely screwed up because I'd open the back without having rolled the film up, and then I would roll the film up like manually in the canister. And there was like, I was home for Christmas one time and my dad was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm just rolling the film up. Like there's gonna be some cool stuff on here. You're going to see it. He's like, you're not going to see it. Like it's, you just ruined the film. Like, yeah. And then, you know, and you grow. So like, but yeah, since then it's just built. And then it was like that, bought a camera at the Melrose Market, like, that's very similar to like a Canon AE1 program, where it has like some functions on it where you can almost like use it as a point and shoot, but you have to focus. But it's also sort of manual, and that was like the next step. And then bought a bunch. I feel like then that's like a very common thing. You just start buying cameras because you're kind of obsessed with it. And then the biggest one for me was just like coming home in like 2019. And then getting deep into it and like trying to find my way back because I was no longer in LA and didn't have those connects. And yeah, like bought a medium format camera, bought a Mamiya RB67, still use it at every show to this day, you know, and it just like grows.
Yeah. I mean, you being influenced behind that camera at first, you know, you were in LA for 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, out there, were you like working as a photographer at any point? Like, were you getting paid out there with jobs?
Sorta.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like I would,
it was more, you were the one with the camera and you were just, you know, in that moment,
yeah,
you were just like taking those opportunities.
Yeah. And also just having friends or people looking out for you and being like, yeah, hey, I'll pay you X amount for this. Or, yeah. I mean, I think in my time realistically there, like shooting as a photographer, probably had 3 things that actually were like you are coming here and you're getting paid for this gig. Like, yeah, that's happening. But otherwise it was just under the table, like, you know, finding my way. So
when, I mean, like out there, did you at any point think, you know, I'm not gonna this is gonna be a career?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, so you said you went out there originally for acting.
Yes.
You know, like where does that come into play? Like what made you even want to go to LA for acting? Were you doing that here whenever you lived here?
Yeah. So basically I had always had an affinity for this stuff. That's, you know, my mom has a camera, like as a kid, like it's like, you know, one of the point and shoots and something junky. Like I'm at like our family gathering, like trying to take pictures on it. Like I love doing that. You know what I mean? And same goes with like singing, acting, dancing, like just loved all that stuff. But from my dad's side, like growing up, my dad, and he never, you know, like hardcore pushed us like we had to do something. Just my dad played minor league baseball and major league for like a, you know, smidgen of a second before getting injured. And, you know, has just always, that's like as a kid, like in your dad, like it's like I want to play sports. Yeah. So I've played every sport under the sun, and I never got into some of those other things. And I think you develop that in high school, that idea of like, oh, that stuff isn't the cool thing to do, or that isn't that. And I was definitely very lost at that time, so I never got into this stuff. Fast forward to like probably 2 or 3 years prior to going to Los Angeles, probably 2 years. My late grandpap, Ernie, asked me to go to Larry Servi out in Monroeville. He runs a like theater and like dance school. And also I got to go see Larry because I haven't seen him in a really long time.
Larry's still kicking, huh?
I hope so. I really do. He's a really, really good guy.
Say it again. Larry Servi.
Larry Servi.
Servi.
Yeah. Just a huge legend in the game. Funny enough, like that's some like Westmoreland County shit of like just, well, that's Allegheny County, hilarious enough. But Monroeville is so close to like the edge there.
Yeah, close to the edge
it's
for
like,
sure.
It's sort of a part of it, but it's like, you know, my dad grew up in like Churchill and, you know, now Woodland Hills area, Forest Hills-ish area, so on and so forth. And they all know each other. But I started going there and I would just work on monologues and like try to get chops, you know? And honestly, acting is like still one of my favorite things. And I love doing it. But I mean, like, I can honestly say like, I'm like terrible at auditioning. There's like, if I'm on a basketball court and like we need to do something in like the final seconds of a game and like I need to put in work and go get something, or in life, I'm good.
Yeah.
But like, there's a thing about like stepping into a room and you're in like West Hollywood and there's just 3 people there you don't know, and it's a student project about something you know nothing about, but you're going to go in and read for this part. And then they're like, okay, slate. And then it just like all hits in your head and you're like, oh, I'm going to do a really bad job. This is going to be the worst audition I ever do. And it like that's me pandering. But regardless, my grandpa sent me down there, like, and I like was just like, hey, you should do this. He'd been telling me forever to like, you should go out and do this acting shit. And I was like, okay, cool. And started doing that. Was in a couple like just like short films, like student films around Pittsburgh area, and nothing realistically that saw the light of day.
Nothing before that in like high school. You just focused on sports in high school.
Yeah, all I did was play basketball. Like it hit a point. It's crazy how it like worked up of just like, you know, playing baseball because my dad played baseball, and like, you know, doing all these other sports and football, love football, you know, built that up. And then like once I got basketball just started taking over to the extent like playing AAU and stuff where like everything fell out. And then it was just all me and my brother did growing up was just basketball. And that's where, I mean, it's hilarious. Like I said, came in, you brought Elizabeth forward, and I'm like, oh, Steve Swick, like one of the biggest people I saw when I was like a freshman, like around the area.
Like literally, like physically biggest.
A very, very tall human being. Yeah. Like him and Herb Pope were the 2 biggest, like center power forward guys like in the city.
So as a basketball player, you're aware of people like that just because that's in your like stratosphere of like basketball players.
Yes.
But it's so interesting to think that, you know, in high school, like a lot of people, they just like don't really like you said, you just have no clue what the hell you want to do. You have one thing that you're just like, all right, I'm going to just, kind of hone in on this. But other than that, you have the blinders on with everything else. Like my biggest regret, I swear, is to not have done any theater or anything in high school. I was
Dude, you have a great voice. You'd be great. Like,
dude, I would kill a local
You have great
play.
charisma.
I've been trying to find a local performance around here. I'm trying to get into like some Hamlet or some shit.
You should.
I'm trying to.
I would love to go
easy.
watch it. I also need to come to like a Bottle Rocket night when you read, like when you guys do like table reads and stuff like that. Because I would love to like see you do that.
Yeah, dude. Now being an adult and not really, I just don't care. I just do what I want now. But there's no distractions, that you have in high school with like, oh, none of my friends are doing this. None of the people that I'm like, none of my boys are going to be in a play. So I'm not going to do it.
High school is
it's a weird time.
It's a really weird time, man.
You're so malleable.
I feel for anyone that knew me in high school. I wouldn't say I was a bully at all. I think I was just like an asshole. Like,
yeah.
I was in the sense of just not knowing what to do. Like, it's like,
yeah,
I don't know who I should be friends with, or like, and then you have like, your dad at that time being like, hey, just know your friends at this time, they probably won't be your friends far down the line.
Yeah, and you're like, you're crazy.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, this is going to go on forever. It's going to be like childhood, never ending, and it changes, and it's like you're like, oh man, I wish I could have done this differently or that differently, and I definitely wish I would have at a younger age also enjoyed like
weird
the
shit,
arts and weird shit.
Yeah,
like,
whatever you wanted to.
Felt really open,
and not really took the outsider's perspective into consideration, and just like, as weird as it says, follow your heart. Yes. But outside of school, you getting into this Larry Servi school. I mean, is this like a big place?
No, I mean, it's definitely more focused on like dance.
Okay.
Like I know a lot of friends of mine, sisters and stuff like that, went up there and did dance. Like people from like that Franklin Regional and like Murraysville, Greensburg area, as well as Monroeville and Woodland Hills area, like would go.
So this was just kind of like a creative hive that
it was way more centered on, I feel like, theater and dance. Like Larry has put on like all of the shows at Gateway High School and so on and so forth for like forever. Like the theater productions they do. And he's great. He's a really, really good guy and a legend. That was your first experience as far as like, reading lines and everything. Yeah. I had never done that before. So I'm like in there, like reading, love Marlon Brando's one of my favorite actors, but like reading, Elia Kazan, like, why am I blanking on this right now? Name of the, On the Waterfront. And I'm reading like the famous thing in there where he's like, I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody, type shit. And like, but I'm like doing this my first time and I'm just like reading the lines and Larry's like, that's not it. You're not doing anything. Like, keep trying. Like, or just like, it was just sitting in like a room with mirrors, like for dance. And it's just me and him in this room, just reading lines. And it got me to places I've gotten to. It taught me a lot. So going out in LA and like, trying to be an actor out there, you're auditioning out there. You were saying that it's just like, I'm sure it's a tough thing. Yeah.
If you listen to any podcast I listen to Mark Maron. I don't know if you know who that is, Mark Maron. He interviews all these actors and he talks about auditions, and every single actor talks about how it's like, the worst thing to do. He just interviewed Al Pacino, and Al Pacino was like, I fucking hate auditioning. He's like, it's ridiculous to just go in front of a room and read in front of these people. But it's such like an odd experience, I would imagine, to see a line of people that are reading for the same shit as you. It's probably super intimidating. You're probably like, just like me, like at Bottle Rocket, I prepare like, a monologue to open up a show, and it goes out of my mind as soon as I get on stage and I just wing it. And it turns out great. Like I can wing some shit for sure, but I don't know. It's just like a wild, to execute something like that, to have some lines and to try to, encapsulate that in your words and make an impact to, sort yourself out and stand above all these other people that are doing it.
Dude, you're standing in line at a, casting house of sorts, whatever you want to call it. But, you're just standing in line somewhere. You might be in Santa Monica, you might be in West Hollywood, you might be in, Tarzana, you might be in Studio City, and you're just there standing in line, and all you go to is, you can be tough, of course, in that situation, or be strong, or be having a good day, and you're not thinking about it as much. But all of us, we all rationalize and look at things and judge, or not saying judge in the worst way, but try to compare and contrast. And you're in there and you're like, oh, this person looks much better than me. Oh, this person's really composed and working on their stuff. Oh, this person's really, really down in the dumps. I think I'm going to be better than one person, but then there's 30 more waiting to be called in there, and you're standing, and then you just walk into a room and it's just expected to be cut and dry. And so it might be a Toyota commercial, and you go in and you're going to be on a national spot, and you're just going to be yeah. And they'd have you do that or something, and you say your name, and then you say it, and then you leave the room, and then you're like, what did I just do?
That's the second time you use the word slate. What does that mean?
Slating is just saying hi, I'm Trevor Pavlik. I'm reading for the role of, Joshua in the book of, David, whatever,
okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's go, run your line.
So, obviously, you are not a famous actor.
No.
Unfortunately.
No, I'm not.
What is the closest, do you have any, close calls with jobs where you what's the closest you've been to doing something? You ever get a Dell commercial or something?
I've gotten, and this is people are going to be yeah, right, he didn't do that, it's fake news. Because everyone says they get to the last callback. But I've had a good amount of times where I've gotten to the last callback for national commercials or things like that.
Yeah.
And I just don't, I think it's just a thing of they're picking something that just, obviously they're picking what they think works. But I've just been in a bunch of just not noteworthy things, and that's fine. I've had a lot of fun being a part of sets. I want to do more of it, but no, realistically there's nothing to show for there. I've had it's funny because you have those things that are a break or a little moment, and it's not saying that break is Martin Scorsese was having coffee and I ran into him and he was I want you to read for the part opposite Leonardo DiCaprio. That shit doesn't happen. Not saying it doesn't, just it's extremely uncommon.
Yeah.
But I've had my moments where, you meet somebody and they have a connect, and then they are hey, oh, you're an actor here, come in and read something on this day. I have something, and it's for you being in LA, living paycheck to paycheck, trying to make it happen. That is everything. You're oh, this is going to change my life. You're going into it I'm going to prepare so hard. There's nothing worse than me preparing so hard for any of those moments, and all I've ever done is destroy them. And it's funny to look back on. I laugh about it and enjoy it. I think I even have on my computer that I filmed on my Nikon D3200.
You got some old?
I have some old cell
videos?
tapes that are bad,
man,
really bad.
You got to
and
put
we're
out
talking
a Patreon or something and be yo, if people want this, slide me a couple.
Oh yeah,
couple bucks, I'll put it out.
They're really bad. But I think more so than any other creative medium, in the sense of photography or making songs or whatever, writing, acting is just such a tricky place to come up in and work out of, because you want to work with the best people, and as an actor, not as a director. You're just photographer or or as a singer or songwriter, where you lay the whole thing out. You're making the entire thing yourself. When an actor, your goal always is you want to work on great projects with great directors and great cinematographers and people making incredible work. And so it's really tough because you're sifting through oh, I'm going to do maybe, the past 3 student films you got cast for weren't that great, but then the next one's awesome and it's really great. But then you go to a Corona commercial or something and you're just a background actor and it's awful, and you're just always being tossed around. So I feel for anyone that goes and does it, and I think you should try, do whatever.
Yeah,
but it's a wild time.
I bet it is. I mean, every one of these famous actors that you listen to on interviews, their whole trajectory is just fucking insane. And it's like you said, it's, you know, the majority of them are like, yeah, I got a break by, like, you know, some dude was at the Comedy Store, and, like, you know, I was a valet, and I met someone, and, you know, it's just all that shit. But
it's also wild because it doesn't lead right to a lead role. It's like that relationship maybe got them an audition and they capitalized on it, or got, you know, it worked, and then it built into some smaller things and, like, led. So it just like anything, it just takes time.
So what brings you back to Pittsburgh after LA?
I had broken up with my ex, who was an artist out in Los Angeles, and it was like seen as a break, and but it was really like we were definitely done, and I did not see it at that time. I was a shell of myself at that point in time, but yeah, and that was really like all that brought me back. And then I was planning on going back out. I was working at a wood shop, a cabinet shop in Gibsonia with some really nice people, and trying to, like, you know, just build some funds back up and go back out.
This is 2019?
2019, yeah. Okay. And then obviously you can kind of guess what's about to happen. COVID happened. And I was like, all right, I'm ready to go. And then it's like, oh, I got laid off from that job. And I was like, why? Like, I wasn't watching the news or anything, so I wasn't, like, in tune at all. It was crazy. I was really zoned out. Yeah, and then everything shut down, so I didn't go back out. And
are you taking photos here whenever you move back to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I was dude, I was on Craigslist. Somebody would put on Craigslist, like, need pictures of a house, we'll pay $25. And I'd, like, hit him up, and then drive to, like, Irwin and, like, take pictures of, like, some shitty house for a realtor, get $25, and then, like, go on there and, like, find, you'd find some cool things too. There's like this Pittsburgh undie run they do down in the South Side.
Yeah.
And I shot, like, photos for that one time. I'm not even saying, like, these are, like, my most great thing, but, like, people there were all troopers, and they had, like, a lot of fun, like, running and doing their thing. And
you're just looking for opportunities,
just anything, like, just events, anything. And I love architecture too. It's like, I love spaces and just, like, seeing, even you down here, like, how you put a space together, and, like, just that itself. It doesn't have to be, like, great, like, architectural prowess of how a space was designed, but just how somebody inhabits it. And my dad does real estate. He is not playing baseball anymore. And I would just ask him, hey, is there a vacant house that's staged, like, no one's living in it, and they have it staged to try and sell it? Hey, can we go shoot it? So I was working at the wood shop, and then just, like, going and shooting, like, houses and trying to just build a portfolio that way.
Yeah.
But then it's crazy because you, like, hit up architectural firms and you're like, hey, do you guys have any jobs coming up? I'll shoot it from, like, conception, like, you guys putting cement in the ground till, like, the end.
Yeah.
And, like, give you something cool to pull with it. And of course, you know, which, not surprising, you just get crickets and no one really responds to you. So
at that point in 2019, when you moved back here, 2020, you know, what is, like, your skill level of shooting? Like, would you consider yourself someone who was, like, beyond a novice? You know, were you intermediate at that point? Like, would people hire you because you shot good stuff, or were you just, like, you know, were you just a hungry dude out there trying to find stuff? If that kind of makes sense. It's kind of a weird way to phrase that question.
I think, like, right before I left, I had started to kind of have an understanding of just taking pictures. It wasn't just, like, randomly flashing shit off. Like, I was actually starting to be like, oh, hey, like, this is how I'm crafting. This is how I'm doing this. This is how I want to shoot this person in this light. And started doing some studio work too, which I think is just, like, another step compared to just shooting in natural light. But it also was just, like, being hungry and having a camera, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of this was. But I would definitely still say, I mean, I still even will jokingly say now that, like, I'm just some level of, like, a novice, or that's how, realistically, I'm just saying that's how I like to approach the work. Like, because
I get that. I like that.
I think it's really, really nice to try to shoot something and feel like it's the first time, or feel like you don't know. I mean, it's the same thing going back to acting as things. Like, that's why child actors are honestly so great, because a lot of times when they're in front of a camera, they don't really know anybody. They're not trained over time to have these, preconceived notions or something going into something where they're not going to be able to like act the part. They're just honest.
That's really fascinating to think about that.
That's like when I'm taking pictures, I want to just feel honest with how I'm doing it. So I'm not necessarily all the time trying to just get someone to pose or do something. I just want it to feel like reactionary and real. So I think I hadn't really like conceived that's what I wanted to do yet, but I think I was getting better at understanding all of the just ISO, shutter speed, how I want to do stuff, how certain lenses look.
Yeah, that's a better way to ask the question than I was going to ask. At that point, excuse me, 2019, 2020, you were more educated on, the ins and outs of the camera rather than just like dicking around and hoping for, good shot.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. More intentional. Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
So, 2020 out here, you're running around shooting, houses in Irwin for $25 and just trying to find some jobs. Where does like, shooting live music come into play?
So I had shot a couple things, when I was in Los Angeles of like, just music and like shot at like Viper Room for some shows and different stuff like that and messed around with it. And I enjoyed some of the stuff that I got. I at the time, again, going off of what we just talked about, like I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, especially because I had a digital camera with some of that stuff too. So it was just like, put it on auto, take the pictures, go back and look at the info and be like, oh, it shot this at like, f2.8. And the ISO is at like, 6,400 or some crazy shit. And so it can actually see in the dark and take the picture, and like got an understanding of it there. But I've always loved just being around any form of like someone working creatively or pushing for something and
being able to document that.
Yeah. And so that thing was already there. So, but like I wasn't doing that when I was back in Pittsburgh. I was just trying to kind of make a living with any of this shit. And I was getting some money from the government during COVID, like a lot of people were, because nobody was working and trying to do stuff. And it really a lot of this stuff kind of finds its way into the music side from me starting to date my now fiance to be wife, Morgan, through her, I started like, I honestly like, which is cool about being on this podcast is like through Morgan, I started like actually experiencing Pittsburgh. And, like prior to that, like I left when I was like 22, 21. So I didn't like go to places in the city, like businesses you've interviewed or, people you've interviewed or like bands or like go to see the Common Heart. And like when I started dating Morgan, I like went out and watched bands. Like we would go to shows or we would go do something. And that just like led into the idea. And then her best friend is Nate Catanzaret's wife, Al. And I just like, me and Nate hit it off the first time we met each other, and I knew we were going to, like, Morgan would just always be like, you guys are going to be best friends. Like, it's going to be like that thing. Like, and we knew that. And I still remember like the first time ever was it was my birthday.
That just passed, huh?
Huh?
That just passed your birthday?
November 26th.
Happy birthday.
Thanks, dude. But
how old are you?
I'm 33.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my birthday, and me, Nate, Al, and Morgan went to a buddy of Nate's house, or his girlfriend's house. And I remember that was like one of the first times me and Nate hung out, and we went out on the back porch, and we were just like having a cigarette, and we were bullshitting. And this is like literally the first time I'm like meeting him in person, and we're standing on this back porch and just kind of like having a good talk. And Nate is like, when Nate is cool with you and like you guys get up, he'll just like be really open and like honest. And so it was just funny because it was like the first time we're talking, and he just instantly is just like, hey dude, like you kind of like, you seem like you're into cool shit. You got to check out the stuff we're working on with Charles. And he started just showing me songs that Charles was doing, and I had no idea who Charles Wesley Godwin was at the time.
Yeah, for people that are listening right now, Nate Catanzarite is the bass player for Charles Wesley Godwin. I interviewed him a few weeks ago. You could find that episode there, but that's who we're speaking about.
And that was like the, I wasn't shooting it, but that was like the intro to, hey, let's get back into music stuff. Like, let's do this, because Nate was like, after showing me that, and I was, he's showing me like some of my favorites, like Strawberry Queen, like Seneca's still,
Seneca
is like probably, Seneca's like in itself as an album is a really incredible album, and Al does a great job all the time with any of those, but the albums Charles makes. But we're like listening to all these songs, and Nate's just like, hey, you got to come down to Al's studio and just hang out with the band and like take pictures. And
this is 2020?
Early 2021.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, anytime. And then it just built into this, like we had like a long amount of time where like didn't end up at the studio, and then just one day Nate was like, hey, come down, like we're like rehearsing for this like upcoming run we're gonna do. And like I went down and brought my VHS camera that like my mom and dad, like very Pittsburgh-esque saying mom, my mom and dad would use and shoot like home videos on, and I was like really getting into that, and again had my other cameras that I'd bought, like my medium format, my Art B, and other stuff, and just feeling confident this time, just taking a lot of pictures and getting into that. Went down there, made a little video with the VHS and with
like a full size VHS camera.
No, not a full size. It's a VHS-C. So it's like I can't remember what exactly the model is, the Panasonic, but it's using VHS-C tapes, and made a whole just thing with the guys. And then, it was like a couple days after hanging out there with them while they played, and like that Nate called me and was like, hey, Charles is in to have you come on the run with us if you'd want to come. It was for like, no money. And I remember at the time I was like, oh, I'm getting offered a job. Well, let me call you back and let you know if I want to do this, And then I called Morgan, and Morgan was like, why would you not do that? Like, what else are you doing right now? Like, that's a gig. Like, that's a thing to do. That's great. And like, I was like, yeah, I'm being an idiot. And then that all started. It was like, I basically had not shot live concert footage at all, or taken really much work with that from like an artist standpoint, to just like, Nate was like, come on the road, because you take pictures and you like have a good eye and make cool stuff, so like it'll work.
Yeah I mean, like, so 2021, Charles isn't at the level he's at now, obviously.
No,
but
when I met Charles in June, like late June of 2021, when we went on that first run down to Pineville and Nashville for two shows. I mean, I think Charles had like 7,000 followers.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask. Like, in that moment, whenever he was like, yo, come on this run for us, like, what did you think? Like, did you think that band was going to be what it is now? I think you could be honest now, because
no,
obviously,
of course. I will say this. Did I think it was going to pan into everything that like this is now?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, because like
I don't think you can.
That's exactly my point. I mean, if you're a photographer and you're looking for, these gigs, and you're like, yo, I'm a photographer, I'm trying to make a career out of this and get paid, for you to like accept a job where you're not going to get paid, I'm sure that would cross in your mind, like, is the juice worth the squeeze for this right now?
Yeah, but again, at that point, the same thing like I said about calling a fiance at the time, my girlfriend, and just being like, should I take this? Is I don't have any other juice otherwise. Like, there's nothing else going on. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here. And but I will say this about those guys is like, once I was around them in the studio, and I think anybody, and I think that happens at those shows. And I'm speaking of them first off right now, because like, I didn't know Charles from Adam. You know? And but like, when you're around those guys like Max, Nate, Al, Meeks, Reed, Joey, Eric, like, there's just a thing there, like, of knowing those guys have just played forever and ever, and this Beaver County thing that they have, that like, I always would say to them, and I I've always stuck by it is that like they are bigger than just being like just a backing band for somebody, and not saying that that's a problem, just simply saying like they're all extremely talented guys and they have like a thing about them and this creativity and gel that they have working with people, and it shows with people that come to the studio that like I was like, no, this is a good creative space. These are like really like talented guys. Like something will come of this. And then it's funny because through meeting Charles and getting to know him, Charles felt like somebody I would have been friends with in high school, you know, not having known him prior. Like I just like, he's super into sports, you know, but then he also has this drive. He has this thing. He has this creativity. He has this ability to just write stories that it just, as things progressed, you were like, no, there's definitely something here, but just like anything else, it's, will those things fall in place along with like, you know, pounding the pavement and going out, driving to the other end of the country and whatnot, like will all of those things kind of come to fruition like through something like falling in our lap and happening along with all that hard work. And it's just like crazy that it like did.
It did.
Yeah.
So you got on that run with them. You take some photos. They're obviously probably happy with, you know, the work that you did. Are you yourself happy in that moment? Because if that's your first opportunity to go out with a band and document their music and their shows at that point, you know, did you feel confident after you had that experience?
I think that was like a really awesome time because I didn't have any worry of like job security or anything. Like we were just like at that point it's like, I don't know, just are you gonna have money for food over the weekend, like to eat wherever we go? So I think at that time I felt really free taking pictures, like, and it led to me taking some cool stuff there early on, or some things that are like really special. Like I can think of like, you know, that first show at 3rd and Lindsley, we were there and I thought there was like a really good turnout, but like in the back room, it was like all of the Allegheny High guys minus Meeks at the time, because Meeks came on a little longer down the line to sell merch with me. But it's like all of them laying on a couch with like, I think it's Reed laying over top of everybody on like a couch. And it's like one of those things that like, I'll never forget that picture. You know what I mean? Like, and there's other ones that are really great, but I think at the time I was like, yeah, hey, I'm doing really good work. This is cool. Like I'm starting to get the hang of it. Like I'm getting the hang of like the settings on my camera and things to do. Again, I'm at the time very, very broke. Digital is a great medium to work in. I still have my film cameras and I'm taking film pictures of the shows, but like I'm really just shooting mainly in digital, but like I'm getting an idea of all of this stuff and building it, building my skills up. And I thought at the time, yeah, the photos and stuff coming out were like really cool. Although I will say, and this goes for like a Bottle Rocket or like any of these smaller like social halls, lounges, or places that like where we would play, like with Charles would be at, like, you know, like 100 to 200 cap room or 300, like is like kind of pushing it. Like a lot of those rooms, it is interesting. You know, you might have a place that really spends it on lighting and has like a really nice setup and really knows their shit, or you'll be at one and they'll have like the worst, they'll have like no lighting, you know, or they'll just have like a blue and a red light, and there's nothing more annoying in post on digital cameras than like trying to repair that type of harsh blue and red lighting all over the stage on like the person you're taking pictures of. And it's, yeah, so it like, I think it's the come up of being a like photographer and working with somebody on like a small venue, like come up, like whether you're trying to just follow some bands or you're trying to like be somebody's photographer, dude, it's really tricky because it's tough to get like really great. Like I feel like the greatest pictures or that thing or whatever, it just finds its way. So.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that because, you know, you guys playing small shows back then, every situation is different, like you said. So you have to be able to adapt and, you know, kind of fine tune your your talents with the camera to these different environments that are all different, whether one be, lit well or, lit with, a couple different color lights. In that moment, with you not having like that crazy like pressure of you just being like the new photographer there, kind of gives you, you're earning your stripes there. You're figuring it out, and it's like trial by fire, I would bet.
Best way, for me at least. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting to think about that obviously these bigger shows that you're playing with Zach, the lighting and everything, that's all
it's the same every night. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, so you learn that, but as a smaller touring band, I mean, you guys are just getting in where you fit in. So you're just like, getting into that space.
It's
and
all adapting.
Figure it out.
I mean, from the standpoint of like them playing a show, it's dope every night that it's a new place. There's new people in this town. There's new this. Like, I love that. Like, the come up is such a cool thing to shoot. I just definitely say, like, from the standpoint of specifically how I was getting in.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like learning the ropes as I go, and it's just like, oh, this venue had a great time, shot great, got awesome footage, like got awesome pictures. And the next one we go to, it's like there's a place we played like in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky on this amphitheater stage thing, and I'm saying amphitheater like it's like Star Lake. No, it's like
a park, like a local park.
It's like a shed standing up over this hill to a little pavilion down below for like 30 people, like a private-ish show, and it's like there's no lighting.
Yeah,
there's nothing, and it's like, and for me at that moment, it's like, oh, shit, what do I do now? Like, I don't know how to freaking shoot this. I can't even get on stage with them, let alone like take some stuff that I like. So it was. It definitely helped me grow, very fast.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you progress, you take photos for these guys, and when does it become like a sure thing that you're going to be you're going to be working with Charles, Wesley Godwin, and all those guys, not just like a one-off show?
I think it was after that first weekend where we played those two shows. We literally drove from the studio in New Brighton. I'm just thinking of just Beaver in general, but we drove from New Brighton with, trailers attached to like Al's Bronco and like Charles' SUV, and like drove all the way to Nashville and then back up to Pineville. And I think in that time, I had already started to become buddies with the guys, and from just that initial going to Al's studio up in New Brighton. But then it like on the road, we just got like really, really close as a group. And even like Chuck like takes his time to, I think like work relationships and whatnot out at the time specifically too. Also very different time for him compared to now, in the sense of like, he had Gabriel at the time. He had Sam at home, and he's like, think about that, like, 7,000 followers or whatever, and like playing shows for 15, 20 people in a random town in Kentucky over the course of a couple shows with like this band of goofballs from Beaver County, and like we're just trying to make it work. So it's like it's like not surprising that he was even maybe a little bit like slower to come along as like a group of us all just being super buddy. But after that first run, like we all got really attached and close, and I just felt like then I was like, yeah, I'm gonna kind of do this until I can't.
Yeah,
because I'm having a lot of fun, and I think that's like, honest to God, 90% of the game is just to like enjoy people you work with and work really good.
Yeah, you got to be a good hang.
Yeah,
that's probably more important than you doing than you shooting good photos.
That is still the best advice ever. I was a executive assistant for executive producer in Hollywood, and I would like go to his house and pick him up every day and drive him around to meetings and golfing and all this shit, and it was goofy. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that job a lot, and I also like royally fucked that job up too a lot. But I still will never forget. He just said to me one day when like we were driving around, we were like in the Pacific Palisades, and he just like, we were at a stoplight, and he just like turned to me like in the middle of like sitting on a conference call, and he like muted. He was like, "Hey, I just want you to know the most important advice I can give you in life is to just be easy to work with." he's like, if you're easy to work with, you can do absolutely whatever you want. And I think how these things have like worked their way, like that's exactly what like the groups I've been around have been. It's just everybody just coexists.
Yeah, I mean, you got to. I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are. If you're a fucking asshole and no one likes being around you, you just ain't gonna fit.
True.
So you guys, you know, obviously over the time with Charles, you know, you're taking photos, you're selling merch, and you're, you know, kind of moving along with them. How does it spiral into, you know, being Zach Bryan's photographer?
It's crazy how quick this happened. So, you know, just talked about those 2 shows we played, and then we like went out, and we realistically just went out and played a lot of shows that were just very very small amounts of people showing up. But we had known for a while, because we were doing this like West Coast run with Sonny Sweeney at the time. And we knew for a while that we were going to meet up. Like Charles had brought it up. I didn't even know who Zach was at the time. Charles had brought up that he was going to do this, you know, podcast thing with Zach Bryan in Seattle. And
a podcast?
Yeah. And so I'm guessing what he was talking about. This is just how Charles was putting it out, but it's Zach's Belting Bronco series where he brings people on and they play and, you know, sheds light on them. And we had known about that kind of like throughout the whole summer. So we went into like this like middle of July run of starting to go out west. And as we like progress and get out there, it was like, I think it was the day before we went to Seattle that he you know, left the military and like got honorably discharged or whatever. And
yeah, when was this? Was this 2021 or
2021? This was like I think like late July-ish, something like that, like going into August. And we, like I said, we were in Oregon, and we were about to go to Seattle, and we got word we weren't going to be doing that. And which is funny enough, we went to Seattle, ended up having like our best show of that run at Tractor Tavern. Great place to go see a show in Seattle. And we just, you know, that was it. We didn't end up meeting up with them. And so then like a month later down the line, like we were like really on fumes in terms of just, you know, going out again, back to it, like at the beginnings of it, Charles going out and us having, you know, 6 band members, Reed, Eric, Al, Nate, Max. I didn't even mention Max earlier, I think, but which is crazy. Yeah, so 7 band members plus me plus Chuck. So we had 8 people in the van. Around that time, we were also like, was around the time we were like meeting Meeks too. So we had like 9 people as like our whole group. Yeah. And yeah, we were just kind of on fumes, and we were doing some shows and trying our best. And we saw that Zach was going on his like first tour, and that he was doing what's the McKees Rocks venue?
Roxanne.
Yeah, he was doing the Roxanne. We were like, yeah, the whole band, all of us, we were just like, Chuck, you got to get on the show. Like, hit him up, get us on that show. It doesn't look like he has an opener. Like, let us do it. You know, try to get it. And through Charles and their management team and his management team, they got us on the show, and we did Raleigh first, which was crazy because we were in Pittsburgh. We drove to Raleigh and then drove back to Pittsburgh to do those 2 shows. And yeah, and it was just interesting because Zach, I guess, had this whole time had like an affinity for Charles, you know, music, and had been following him. And so like we showed up, and that first night in Raleigh was just crazy. You know, we had never seen anything like that. Like, again, we had been playing these lounges and small little halls and stuff like that, and doing, you know, fine, and not making a whole lot of money, and, you know, not bringing in like a ton of people. But also anyone who was there was like uber fan of Charles and just like about it. Cause I would talk with him at the merch stand every night, you know? And, yeah. And it was like that first night we get there, and the guys opened the show with hardwood floors at that time. And
A damn ripper.
it is. And it's crazy because it was like at that time, it was like, hey, like let's blow it out the gate and open the show with essentially at the time Charles' biggest song.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I remember that night, I still remember I was like in the upper deck of that venue, and I was filming on my VHS camera, and the guys took the stage and like started playing hardwood floors, and like the place was like clapping and like freaking out, and I remember I was like crying, like filming it, like you can like almost hear it on the VHS like sound, like me like screaming and yelling, like I was so pumped. And that was like this just crazy turning point of us just having like a really like ecstatic and fun show with all this energy. And then like Zach came on, and you know, it was just crazy. I've never seen engagement like that. But at the door, prior to any of this shit happening, when we walked in the thing, he was on the back dock having a cigarette with some of the guys in his band. And I was just walking with one of my film cameras, walking in. I didn't even know that was him. I had not looked him up or listened to any of his music. And me and him, he's like, oh, hey, like what camera is that? And then we started talking about film cameras. And then it just like, we talked for like 15 minutes. And then it like post-show continued talking. He was like, take some pictures during the show. So I took pictures during the show. And then it like slowly started building and building and building. And then when we went to Pittsburgh, I like walk outside and run into him, and then he brings me on his bus and is like, hey, here's like, you know, Mamma Mia 7.2. Like, I've been like trying to have an issue like getting the film out of this camera. Like, can you help me? And like I pull it out and like put a new roll in. He's like, dude, take some pictures on it tonight. And then, you know, like again, just more things of like us continuing, us sitting outside, showing each other like photographers we like and talking about shit. And
Okay.
because he's a great photographer himself. And yeah, and so it just like hit off on those first two shows. And also like in Raleigh and in Pittsburgh, like the band and like the guys like were like very much meshing and chill, that like it wasn't like fully formed yet. But then after that, it was like, hey, do you guys want to come on like the rest of the tour, like towards Tulsa? And it was like, sure, you know.
Yeah,
so
why not, right?
Yeah, and then in Madison, Wisconsin, I felt like that venue there, we like all like really, really meshed and like got together, and like as a group, like both bands, Charles and Zach, everybody, we were just like a big, like fun, friendly group. So,
And I mean, so at that point, you know, well, not really at that point, but, you know, fast forward a little bit, there's obviously a fork in the road. You know, you're taking photos for Charles's band, and then you have an opportunity to take photos for Zach's band.
Yeah.
You know, you obviously are taking photos for Zach's band. And I think it's, you know, where's your mentality on why you went with that?
yeah, I mean, that like transpired. I mean, it was like Kansas City on that first run was the first time Zach brought up like work he wanted to do with me.
Okay.
Compared to me just like being Charles' photographer and also taking pictures for him too.
Yeah.
But Zach went to Charles to like ask him like, hey, can he also, you know, shoot for me and do this work? And Charles was like, at the time, Charles was like, yeah. You know, Charles came to me and was like, you got to do it. You got to go do that shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's an obvious, you know, it's an obvious choice.
Yeah.
As a professional yourself, you know, you have opportunities, and you know, you have to take opportunities as a professional. And I think anyone could really understand that. But you know, you go and you start shooting for Zach, and like, when does that start to be like a thing? Like, you know, you just kind of go with him.
I mean, after 2021, I missed like I know I missed like a little run with the guys.
Which guys?
What?
Which guys?
With Chuck's guys.
Okay.
It was like the first time I'd ever missed, but that was to shoot the cover for American Heartbreak. And that was like the first time I'd like missed some time with the guys, but it was just like understood. It was fine. It was also still the beginnings. Charles had not blown up like he had yet. You know, again, not Family Ties. How the Mighty Fall was doing really well, because it was a perfect storm of it dropping while opening, and all of Zach's fans also just instantly falling in love with Charles, and like it just building and building and building and building. And so now we're like playing some of those same smaller venues and building up. So like I'd missed that for for doing that shoot.
Wait. We can't just fast forward past the American Heartbreak cover.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number and try your call again.
Thanks for listening. See you next week for part 2.